You ever watch your life fall apart in real time? Not just your career or reputation, but the part of you that still believed in love? I'm not being dramatic. I mean literally, in front of 100 people, 2 camera crews, and a CEO who once called you the backbone of the company, and worse, in front of the man I loved, the man I trusted, the man who stood there and did nothing. That was me, Grace Miller, 30 years old, project lead at Hale Dynamics. At least I was, until the emails. The town hall was supposed to be a celebration. We had just hit a major milestone on Project Meridian, a multi-year initiative I'd bled into. Weekends, holidays, 12-hour days, and cold takeout dinners. All for this. They rolled out the stage like it was a TED Talk. Big screen, bright lights, live stream. Robert Hale stood at the podium with that calm, rehearsed smile. The kind that tells investors everything is fine, even when it's not. I was second on the agenda, my name already glowing in sleek white text on the display, Grace Miller, Project Lead, Meridian. I stood just off stage, smoothing my blazer, running lines in my head. Then Victoria Hale, the sister, the shadow, slipped in behind the mic with a voice like chilled syrup. "We've had tremendous growth," she purred, "but with great progress comes responsibility. Transparency, accountability." That's when the screen behind her lit up. Not with sales charts or milestone summaries, but with emails. Mine. At first I didn't understand. The subject lines looked familiar. Vendor prioritization, budget redirect, urgent, then my name, my signature, my words. Except they weren't. The phrasing was off. Too aggressive, too direct. And the message? That I had pressured our procurement lead to push a shady vendor forward, one with ties to my contacts. Whispers filled the room. Chairs shifted. I felt the air change before I turned to see Robert Hale's face. Not angry, not confused, just disappointed. The kind of disappointment that says, "You're no longer useful to me." And Ethan Hale, son of the CEO, my boyfriend, my maybe one day. He stood halfway up the auditorium, caught mid-motion between sitting and leaving. His face was unreadable, and then, with slow clarity, he stepped back. Away from me. Security didn't drag me out. It wasn't that dramatic. Instead, a clean little email arrived on my phone before I'd even reached my office. Suspension pending investigation. I packed a box, the classic cliché, photos, a succulent, a plaque from the last award cycle, the one Ethan had presented me with. Then I walked. Every step through that lobby felt like a goodbye carved in glass. And there she was, Margaret Hale, wife of Robert. Always polite, always composed. The kind of woman who makes elegance feel like a weapon. She was seated near the coffee kiosk, pearl earrings, red lipstick, unreadable eyes. As I passed, she stood and approached quietly. No smile, just a small white card in her hand. "When you're ready," she said, and slipped it into the box, just under the plaque. Then she walked away. No words, no explanations. I rode the elevator down to the parking garage, blinking hard against tears that refused to fall. The box sat beside me in the passenger seat like a tombstone. I stared at the card. No company name, no title. Just a name in clean serif font, Ava Delgado, and a number. It took me hours to call. I sat at home, blinds drawn, suit jacket still on, watching the shadow of the sunset crawl across my kitchen tiles. The whiskey bottle on the counter was a gift from Ethan, unopened. I reached for it, then stopped. I'd given too many things second chances already. Instead, I picked up my phone and dialed. A woman's voice answered on the second ring, calm, direct. "Ava Delgado." "This is Grace Miller," I said, trying not to sound like someone whose entire career had just been scorched in front of a live audience. "Margaret Hale gave me your number." There was a pause, then a single sentence. "Good. I was hoping you'd call." Disappearing is easier than people think. You don't pack up everything. You don't dye your hair or change your name. You just stop showing up in places where people expect you. No LinkedIn posts, no gym check-ins, no more smiling at coworkers you once called friends. You go silent. And eventually, the noise moves on without you. I vanished from Hale Dynamics without a trace. 3 days after I called Ava Delgado, I met her at a rooftop cafe above a bookstore that smelled like cedar and ink. She was already seated when I arrived. Steel gray dress, espresso in hand, eyes like twin scalpels. Her handshake was firm. Her smile wasn't warm, but it was honest. "I don't need your loyalty," she said before I'd even sat down. "I need your clarity." And just like that, I had a job. Not a second chance. A different playing field entirely. Aurora Capital had a reputation, not for greed, but for disruption. They didn't throw stones, they melted the foundations. Their model was clean investment, strategic pressure, and, when necessary, exposing rot. Ava ran PR, but not the kind with champagne and slogans. Her kind of PR wrote the narratives that brought corporations to their knees. My title was Director of Strategic Communications. Internally, Ava called it something else. Fire control. The first 3 months burned. I didn't say a word to the press. I didn't post on social media. I didn't tell my mother where I worked. I wore neutral suits and walked like a shadow through hallways lined with black glass and purpose. Sam Patel was the first one to treat me like a person. He worked in IT recovery and incident response. Aurora's quiet genius, the kind of man who never looked like he was listening, but remembered everything. Sam didn't ask about my past. He just handed me a coffee on a rainy Tuesday and said, "I pulled a backup of your emails." I stared at him. "What?" He shrugged. "Just in case you ever wanted to know what really happened." And there it was. The originals. My emails, untouched. No threats, no coercion, no manipulation of vendor relationships. And next to them, metadata logs, timestamps, edit trails. Most of the changes were small. Swapped words, redacted attachments, tone twisted from assertive to underhanded. Every change pointed back to one IP range, one office, Victoria Hales. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat with it like a slow poison working its way through the blood. Ava never asked why I stayed late those nights, poring over every thread of that betrayal. She just kept giving me fire to manage. Crises, cleanups, rumors we turned into opportunities. Ava's world was different. People spoke directly. Lies were costly. Truth was currency. She didn't care who you were sleeping with or where you'd fallen from, only that you could get the job done. By month 7, I was writing narratives for whistleblowers, shaping timelines, managing exits for executives who had finally been caught. I stopped thinking about Ethan, or tried to. Then came the folder. Ava slid it across the table at the end of a quarterly review. It was matte black with a silver clasp. No label. "We're sponsoring the 75th anniversary gala," she said, eyes on mine. 3-minute speaking slot, non-negotiable. I opened it. Inside, contracts, RSVP lists, and a media coverage blueprint. Hale Dynamics logo was everywhere. Aurora's sponsorship bought them visibility, but more importantly, it bought us access. "In those 3 minutes," Ava said quietly, "you can tell any story you want." The blood left my face. I closed the folder and leaned back in the chair. The last time I stood on a stage like that, they burned me alive. But this time, the mic would be mine. I'll think about it, I said. She smiled. You already are. That night, I walked home in the rain without an umbrella. Let it soak me through. Let it wash away what was left of Hale's lies still clinging to my skin. By the time I got to my door, I knew I wasn't going to take my 3 minutes to scream. I was going to take them to build. I didn't rush it. That's the part no one tells you about revenge. The good kind takes time. It's not rage, it's architecture, a timeline, a blueprint. I began with what I knew. The day the fake emails were shown, the date I'd submitted my HR disclosure about vendor risks, and the hours the metadata proved someone in Victoria's office rewrote my words. I built a wall-sized grid in my apartment using painter's tape and Post-its, dates across the top, names down the side, a murder board, minus the murder. Every detail mattered. When Riley Chen, the vendor rep I'd supposedly coerced, had submitted their bid, when Victoria's team accessed my draft, when my internal HR file was last opened, patterns emerged like bruises under light. The next step was finding people who still believed in the truth, even if they were scared of it. First, Riley. I found him at a small tech expo in Boston, presenting a beta version of his company's product. I waited until the crowd thinned and introduced myself. He flinched at first, thought I was there to fight. Grace, he said, glancing around. I didn't know if you... I'm not here to make this ugly, I said. I just want the truth, the real timeline. He nodded slowly. I kept everything, emails, texts, even the voicemail where you told me to back off until legal cleared the partnership. I exhaled. That voicemail had vanished from the Hale system, but Riley had it. One match in hand. Second, Janelle Park, the head of HR. Back when I was still Grace Miller, employee Chavrola 4329, I'd sent her a disclosure form flagging potential conflicts with Riley's company. Standard procedure, transparent. I didn't know if she still had it or even remembered it. I reached out through a private encrypted channel Sam helped me set up. She replied in under 10 minutes. I remember. I still have it. You did everything right. Another match. Third, Nora Fields, veteran investigative journalist, currently writing freelance exposés for corporate accountability groups. She didn't take calls unless you had hard proof. I had metadata, timestamps, audio, voicemails. I sent her a summary. She called within an hour. Is this for publication? She asked. Not yet, I replied. Right now, it's for understanding. She made me walk through every detail, every quote, every gap in the timeline. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. What's your endgame? 3 minutes, I said. At the Hale Anniversary Gala. I don't want a lawsuit. I want light. Public, clean light. She was quiet for a while. Then, I'll verify everything. And if it checks out, I'll be in the room. That weekend, I took the train 2 hours north to meet Margaret Hale. She'd suggested a cafe built inside a converted church, the kind with stained glass and cracked pews turned into booths. She was already seated, nursing a tea and wearing gloves, even though it was warm inside. I figured you'd come eventually, she said, removing one glove and reaching across the table. I took her hand. It was dry and strong. I'm not here to ruin anyone, I said. I know. You're here to correct the record. I nodded. Your family isn't a monolith, she interrupted. I don't owe blind loyalty to power. Robert and Victoria have made their choices. Ethan, she paused. He's still finding his spine. Do you think he knew? I asked, quieter than I meant. I think he believed what was easier to believe, she said gently. But sometimes it takes fire to show people what stands and what burns. We sat in silence for a moment, surrounded by the soft hum of espresso machines and hymns repurposed as ambient background music. Then she pulled a small envelope from her coat. "A copy of the board charter," she said. "It confirms that speaking time given to a sponsor at any official Hale event cannot be pre-edited or cut. 3 minutes. Live." I took it with both hands. The final match. Back in my apartment, I spread everything out. Documents, audio, emails, my HR disclosure, Riley's voicemail, Sam's metadata, Nora's vetted facts, Margaret's envelope, 3 minutes of truth, no accusations, no grandstanding, just the record, clean and complete, in my voice. And one more detail. A red dress. Margaret had smiled when I asked what I should wear. "Bring light, not smoke," she said, "but make sure they can't look away." I hung the dress in my closet. 3 weeks to the gala. The fire hadn't started yet, but the match was ready. It started with a whisper. A harmless little rumor. I didn't post it. I didn't even write it. That was Sam. He knew where to drop things so they looked like accidents. Just a vague comment on a mid-tier industry blog, nestled between speculative takes about vendor compliance scandals and anonymous tips about internal chaos at Hale Dynamics. Rumor has it a former Hale employee might make a surprise appearance at the anniversary gala, and not just to drink champagne. No names, no threats. Just enough tension to raise an eyebrow. Victoria Hale took the bait like a shark catching scent. Less than 24 hours later, a new thread appeared in one of the company's private Slack channels. "Security protocol updates for the gala. All senior staff must review." I didn't need access to see what it meant. Sam forwarded me a screenshot. Tightened guest list controls, facial recognition review at entry, social media monitoring for keywords tied to former employees. Desperate people flail when the water gets choppy. Victoria didn't respond publicly. She was far too composed for that. But 2 days later, she appeared on a podcast run by a friendly tech blogger, the kind who never asked hard questions, the kind who got exclusives in exchange for flattery. I listened to the episode as I walked through the park near my apartment. The leaves were falling early that year. Strange how betrayal makes the world look sharper, more brittle. "We pride ourselves on building a culture of innovation," Victoria said, her voice like a blade coated in velvet. "And we've had to make difficult personnel decisions in the past. But we're stronger for it. Anyone who leaves Hale, well, they tend to stay gone." The host chuckled, clearly briefed on the narrative. "You're talking about Grace Miller?" "She was one of many," Victoria replied, letting that smug little smile creep into her tone. "We crushed that girl. She'll stay crushed." I stopped walking. She said it like it was funny, like I was a bug under her shoe. Nora Fields didn't laugh. When I sent her the clip, she wrote back with one line, "This is gold." The blogger, an overeager guy named Tyler with a penchant for attention, agreed to send Nora the raw audio files. No edits, no deniability. The story was beginning to take shape. And it wasn't just about me anymore. Sam had something else, something darker. A private archive he'd been building. Buried metadata from Hale's internal systems. Not stolen, not hacked. Just recovered from devices long since wiped. Drives donated without proper clearance. It was almost too easy. Hale had focused on optics for so long, they forgot how to cover their tracks. What he showed me made my stomach turn. Late-night email edits. Dozens of them. Not just mine. Other employees, too. Tiny manipulations, shifted timestamps, reworded comments that subtly shifted blame or redirected compliance flags. All routed through one office, Victoria's. Some were manual, others automated by a script she'd commissioned, disguised as a formatting utility. a digital scalpel carving away context and truth. "What happens if we leak this now?" I asked. Sam shook his head. "Not yet. If we do, it becomes a tech story about access, exploits. You want this to be human, emotional, public. You want them to see you." He was right. Cold data doesn't burn, but truth wrapped in story, that spreads like wildfire. I started making index cards, one for each piece of proof, color-coded, vendor bids, internal compliance reports, redacted messages, the HR disclosure form, Riley's voicemail, Janelle's confirmation, Nora's fact-checked summary, and now Victoria's own voice calling me crushed. I laid them out on my coffee table like puzzle pieces. The full picture was clear now. Victoria had orchestrated my fall because I'd flagged a vendor she had ties to. She'd rewritten my words to make it look like I'd abused my position. She'd fed that to Robert. And Ethan? He just stepped back and let me burn. But now the truth wasn't just in my hands. It had fingerprints, dates, audio, and a pattern. Margaret sent a message, subtle as always. "The lights are almost ready. Are you?" I knew what she meant. The gala was 2 weeks out. Final rehearsals, PR checks, logistics. And more importantly, Aurora's speaking slot was officially listed in the event program. My name wasn't included, just "Message from Aurora Capital, Integrity in Innovation." Perfect. I met Margaret again that weekend. Same cafe, same quiet booth in the converted church. "I saw the podcast," she said as she stirred her tea. "She's not worried. She's proud." "Good," I replied. "It'll hurt more." Margaret looked up, eyes sharper than usual. "Make sure it hurts with purpose, not vengeance." I paused. "You still believe in Ethan?" She smiled sadly. "I believe in the version of him that flinched when he was 5 and lied about breaking a vase. I don't think that boy's still in there. Then help me prove it." We parted without more words. Back at home, I opened my closet and touched the red dress hanging inside. Soft silk, deep neckline, clean lines, no distractions. Sam messaged me just before midnight. 1 line, 1 hook. "Check your inbox. We got her signature on the script." Attached was a PDF, Hale's automation protocol guide. Buried in the metadata header of the file used to edit my email chain was a username. Vale Yash Director. Victoria's fingerprint. My voice would tell the story, but her hand signed it. We didn't announce the fire. We whispered the smoke first. Aurora Capital published a press release on a Tuesday morning, a routine investor bulletin, quiet on the surface. Just a few lines buried halfway down. In response to increased demand for transparency and corporate alignment, Aurora Capital will be expanding its strategic oversight into long-term holdings, including a 14.7% stake in Hale Dynamics. Our focus? Ethical procurement, data governance, and internal audit compliance. No drama, no accusations, just pressure. By noon, industry analysts were whispering. By 2 p.m., Hale's stock chart had begun to twitch. Not collapse, just a tremor, a warning. Robert Hale responded exactly how Ava predicted he would. Badly. At 3:17 p.m., Hale's internal newsletter dropped a special edition message from the chairman's desk. His voice, full of forced calm, declared they would not be intimidated by outside vultures and reaffirmed their unshakable commitment to family-led innovation. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so precise. That evening, Ava called a war room meeting. I walked into the Aurora boardroom to find Margaret already there. She stood by the window, staring out over the city, arms folded. Ava sat with her laptop open, Sam beside her, flipping through a legal briefing. Ava didn't look up. "It's moving faster than expected." Margaret turned. "He's cornered. but he still thinks the house is his. Then we make the foundation shake, Ava said. Grace, your 3 minutes just became 3 minutes that could change corporate governance. I nodded. I'm ready. And I was. Not because the plan was perfect, not because I believed in tidy endings, but because I'd carried the truth long enough. It was time to set it down, publicly, irrevocably. The next morning, I drafted a single line for Aurora's official channels. It ran under a sleek black banner on every social platform we owned. Just 6 words, white text on gray. Transparency doesn't damage value. Secrecy does. It went viral. Minimalism makes people lean in. Within hours, a dozen reporters had reached out. What's the context? Is this about Hale? Is Aurora prepping a hostile move? We gave them nothing. The silence made it louder. Meanwhile, Sam finalized the digital asset, a time-stamped video composite that showed the original email, the metadata trail, the automation script, and Victoria's audio clip from the podcast. It ended with one simple freeze frame, her name in the document's metadata. Vale director. It wasn't drama. It was documentation. But the real tension built off camera. Ethan hadn't spoken to me since the day I walked out of Hale's lobby with a cardboard box in my arms. He hadn't messaged after the press release, hadn't liked Aurora's post, hadn't shown up in any of the Whisper networks. Until now. My phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in a year. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the decline button. And then, I answered. Grace. His voice was raw. Please, just tell me this isn't what it looks like. I didn't speak. Let him sit in it. You're not really doing this at the gala. You said you didn't want a war. I don't, I replied. But you made peace impossible when you stayed silent. His breath hitched. They told me that you manipulated the system. The emails looked real. I said nothing. I didn't know, he added quickly. I swear. I thought you walked away because you knew you were caught. I finally spoke. I walked away because you didn't even ask me if it was true. Silence. Then, Grace. I want to fix this. You can't, I said, voice flat. But you can sit in the front row and listen. I hung up. Margaret texted an hour later. Tomorrow night. Wear red. 3 words. 1 signal. The next day moved like molasses. Slow, hot, heavy with anticipation. Every breath felt borrowed. Every second too loud. I sat at my desk, hands quiet in my lap, red dress in a garment bag beside me. Sam brought me a small envelope before I left. For your pocket, he said. Inside was a folded card with 1 printed line. Truth doesn't need volume, just a mic. I smiled. Thank you. He nodded. Make it count. That night, the city lit up with celebration. Hale Dynamics' 75th anniversary gala, a black tie homage to legacy, luxury, and ego. The venue, a glass-walled atrium glowing like a jewel box in the skyline. Cameras out front, step and repeats with gold foil logos, smiles like armor. Robert Hale opened the evening with a toast so practiced it sounded like a eulogy. 75 years of innovation, of family stewardship, of unshakable values. The applause was warm. The wine flowed. Then came Ava. She stepped up to the stage, spine straight, eyes like knives. Aurora Capital is proud to sponsor tonight's event, she said, and we'd like to share a brief message on integrity in innovation. Please welcome someone you might remember. The screens shifted. My name appeared, and I stepped onto the stage wearing red. 75 years of Hale Dynamics? That was the banner stretched across the atrium, backlit in soft gold against the high glass walls. Beneath it, the crowd shimmered. Donors, executives, politicians. Everyone who ever wanted to be seen at the right table, under the right lights. I stood behind the curtain just off stage, palms flat against the velvet, listening to Robert Hale's voice fill the room like smoke. "This company has always stood on the shoulders of giants," he said, lifting his glass. "And tonight, we honor the legacy we continue to build, through family, through innovation, through integrity." The applause rose like a tide. I stared down at my hands. They didn't shake. Ava caught my eye from stage right and gave the smallest nod. My cue. She stepped up first. "Thank you, Robert," she said, her voice cool and practiced. "Aurora Capital is honored to support Hale Dynamics and its future. And tonight, as part of that support, we'd like to share a short message about what it means to lead with integrity." She didn't say my name. She didn't need to. The moment I walked onto the stage, the room changed. Not loudly, but with a ripple, like a stone dropped into a still lake. Heads turned, forks stilled. A few gasps broke through the polite silence. The red dress was a statement. I knew it. Clean lines, high slit, no apology. It made me visible, and that was the point. Victoria froze. Ethan, seated at the edge of a donor table, went pale. Robert didn't move, just blinked. Once. Slowly. I reached the podium. 3 minutes. That's all I had. I pulled a remote from my pocket and clicked. The screen behind me lit up. Slide 1. A simple timeline. "This is the truth," I said. "Not dramatized, not weaponized, just documented." Slide 2. December 7th. Internal disclosure filed. My formal HR form flagging a potential conflict in vendor selection, sent to Janelle Park, documented, time-stamped. Slide 3. December 9th. Vendor bid submitted. Standard process, reviewed. Not fast-tracked, not influenced. Slide 4. December 10th. Late-night access logs. System shows document edits from within Victoria Hale's office suite. Changes included soft deletions, language alterations, and strategic rewording of my emails. Slide 5. December 15th. Town Hall reveal. I let it hang. "You were told I pressured a vendor, that I manipulated our systems, that I was a liability." Click. Slide 6. The original email thread. Next to it, the altered version. Red highlights marked the discrepancies. "I never said those things," I said. "What you saw was a version edited to destroy my credibility. It worked. I was fired. Publicly. Without review." Click. Slide 7. Vendor rep statement. Riley Chen. Riley stood from his seat and walked to the second mic. "I worked directly with Grace," he said. "She insisted on full transparency, delayed our bid pending review. I saved the voicemail. She told me not to move forward until legal signed off. That voicemail vanished from Hale's records. I still have it." He stepped back. Calm, unflinching. Click. Slide 8. HR disclosure acknowledgement. Janelle Park. Janelle didn't say much, just stood and nodded. I received the form. Grace did everything by the book. I filed it. It was ignored. Slide 9. Audio file. Public interview. Victoria's voice filled the atrium, crisp, confident. "We crushed that girl. She'll stay crushed." No music played. No narration. Just silence after the sentence ended. I looked directly at her. "You said that out loud." She looked like she might stand, but didn't. Her lips tightened. Her wine glass stayed frozen in her hand. Click. Slide 10. Metadata. Veil director. Sam had overlaid the metadata signature into the edit log footage. A perfect match. Proof of authorship. I turned back to the room. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want a system that doesn't bury truth because it's inconvenient. I want the next woman who flags something wrong not to lose her job over it. I want this company to become what it pretends to be. Final slide. Truth belongs in the room. My timer hit 0. I stepped back from the mic. Before anyone could react, a new voice rang out, steady, poised, commanding. From her table near the center, Margaret Hale stood. She didn't rush. She didn't shout. She simply walked to the same podium I'd just left and leaned slightly into the mic. Our handbook, she said, is a promise. A promise that what's right will be protected, even when it's hard. Tonight, we keep that promise. Applause started slow. One table, then another. Then the cameras pivoted. I turned just enough to see Ethan. His hands were clenched together on his lap. Face unreadable. Robert hadn't moved. But Victoria? She looked like glass held over fire. The match had been lit. Now we'd see what burned. The moment Margaret Hale spoke into the mic, everything changed. It wasn't just what she said. It was who said it. Margaret had always been the quiet one, the poised figure at Robert's side, more ornament than force. But when she stood in that red-lit atrium and told the world, tonight, we keep that promise, the illusion of control shattered. Phones lit up like fireflies. Guests pretended to text as they filmed. The live stream, which had drawn a modest audience at first, spiked mid-speech. Within minutes, Grace Miller was trending. So was Tori Crushed That Girl. And then the Hale board was called upstairs. It was quiet at first, the kind of quiet that comes just before a detonation. Security escorted Robert, Victoria, and several executives to the 30th floor conference suite. Ava and I followed, not as employees, not even as rivals, but as investors. Aurora held 14.7% of Hale Dynamics. We had a seat at the table now. Nora Fields walked beside us, her press badge already flipped, laptop out, hands typing at a rhythm that felt like a countdown. She wasn't reporting gossip. She was publishing facts. Verified, time-stamped, cited. Her story would drop the moment the board session began. Elevator doors opened with a mechanical sigh. The suite was all glass and gloss, Robert's favorite aesthetic. A long obsidian table dominated the room, surrounded by people who'd once toasted to family legacy and now looked like they'd swallowed ice. Robert took his seat at the head of the table. He looked older now, not tired, just peeled back. No script, no podium, just a man caught between a lie and the cost of keeping it. Victoria sat to his right, spine ramrod straight, lips set in a grim line. Her hands stayed folded on the table, but I could see her fingers twitching beneath the surface. The chairwoman of the board, Ellen Voss, opened the session. "We're here to address the revelations presented publicly tonight," she said, tapping a tablet with surgical precision. "The evidence has been reviewed. The allegations are not merely reputational, they are systemic." Robert leaned forward, clearing his throat. "Let's not overreact." Ellen cut him off. "This isn't overreaction, it's accountability. And you, Robert, signed off on a decision that fired an employee without due process." I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. I just sat there, watching the house he built begin to crack. Ava spoke next. "We are the second largest shareholder," she said, calm as frost. "And as such, we are prepared to present our terms for continued investment and board support." She slid a document across the table. 4 bullet points. Immediate removal of Victoria Hale from all operational roles. Suspension of Robert Hale from daily executive duties, pending external review. Appointment of an independent board chair with enforcement power. Implementation of a transparent ethics code with public accountability mechanisms. Robert laughed. Once, short and bitter. "You want to gut us." "No," Ava said. "We want to save you." Ellen picked up the sheet, scanned it, and passed it down. The board will vote. Victoria finally broke. "You don't get to erase me," she hissed. "I built this." I turned to her. "You built it on edits and silence. Now it's time to rebuild it on truth." For once, she had no comeback. The vote passed, unanimous. Victoria was stripped of all authority, effective immediately. Robert was granted a sabbatical. The PR word for you're benched, but not fired, yet. Ellen stood. "We'll announce this tomorrow. The story goes live in an hour either way. It's better to lead than to follow." Ava looked at me. "Your call." I pulled out my phone and hit send. Nora's article went up instantly. "The crushed girl was never broken. How Grace Miller exposed the truth behind Hale Dynamics." It was clean, sharp, unapologetic. It didn't paint me as a hero, just a person who refused to be erased. Robert stared at the table, the pen in his hand trembling. He signed the motion documents anyway. Cameras in the lobby caught it all. The CEO of Hale Dynamics signing off on his own suspension, jaw tight, eyes hollow. The image would be on business sites before sunrise. As we left the suite, Margaret waited in the hallway. She looked at her husband through the glass wall, then turned to me. "You did it." "No," I said. "We did." She reached into her bag and handed me a folded page from the Hale Employee Handbook, the section on whistleblower protection. "I told you I'd stand when it counted." Downstairs the gala continued, muted now, confused. Some guests had already left. Others hovered near screens, reading headlines aloud like parlor gossip. But the truth was out, and no one could edit it. Ethan stood at the edge of the crowd, suit collar unbuttoned, face pale. He looked at me like he wanted to speak, but I walked past him. Not because I was angry, because I was done carrying silence for people who couldn't hold truth. Outside, the air was cold and clean. The burn had reached the boardroom, and the fire was just getting started. The boardroom burn left behind only glass and silence. Victoria disappeared from the company feed within 24 hours. Her corporate bio scrubbed. Her email bounced. Her parking spot was reassigned. Just like that, the woman who once dictated vendor decisions and wielded silence like a scalpel became a ghost. But silence never lasts. The fallout came in pieces. Anonymous tips leaked to minor outlets. Employees whispered in elevators. The internal network exploded with cautious relief, people checking their own files, wondering how close they'd come to being graced. Hale's HR inbox filled with requests to reopen ignored complaints. Robert retreated behind a PR wall of stepping away for reflection. But it was Ethan who shattered first. He found me 3 days after the gala. Not in a boardroom, not at a public event. Just outside my apartment, in the shadow of a maple tree whose leaves were turning the color of fire. I opened the door to find him standing there, hands in his coat pockets like a man who didn't know where else to go. "I read everything," he said. I didn't invite him in. I didn't smile. He shifted his weight. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything." "You don't," I said quietly, "but I owe you the truth." I stepped outside. We stood on the stoop, alone in the late afternoon chill. He spoke first. "I froze that day," he said, "at the town hall. I saw the emails and, God, I wanted to believe you. But everything in my life, this company, my family, it was always about control, about trusting the system. And when that system pointed at you, He broke off. "You stepped back," I finished for him. He nodded. "I didn't just step back. I shut off. I let them tell me who you were, because it was easier than asking." A bird chirped in the distance. A dog barked 2 blocks away. Real life, still ticking. I spent a year pretending that it hadn't happened, he continued. I dated. I worked. I told myself you'd moved on, that maybe it wasn't as bad as it felt, but every date felt hollow. Every board meeting felt like glass underfoot. You went to therapy? I asked, surprised by the honesty. He nodded. Eventually, I had to learn what it meant to listen to discomfort, to sit in shame, and not just patch it with distraction. I looked at him then. Really looked. He didn't seem smaller. Just stripped of illusion. Like the scaffolding had come down and the raw structure remained. I'm sorry, he said. Not just for what I did, but for not seeing you clearly when it mattered most. I didn't answer right away. I thought of the nights I sat awake, wondering if I should reach out. If there was still something between us worth saving. I thought of all the things I didn't say and how silence had once felt like power. But power built on silence isn't strength. It's just another kind of lie. So I said the only word that felt honest. Coffee? His head jerked slightly, like he hadn't expected that. No speeches, I added. No pressure. Just two people sitting down, talking. He nodded. I'd like that. The next morning, we met at a small corner cafe near Aurora's Midtown office. No cameras, no audience, just the scent of roasted beans and the hiss of milk steaming into foam. We sat by the window. 2 cups, 2 people, a year between them. Ethan didn't try to charm his way back in. He didn't reach for my hand. He just told the truth. About the fights at home, about watching his sister fall from grace, about the guilt that rotted behind his ribs. I told him about the nights I almost hit send on a message, about the rage that faded and left grief behind, about the way Ava handed me power without asking me to apologize first. We didn't plan a future. We just acknowledged the wreckage. Do you think it would have been different? He asked. If I'd stood up for you that day. I don't know, I said honestly, but it would have mattered. The bell above the door jingled as someone walked in. The world kept turning. Outside, the Hale building still stood, its logo gleaming, its lobby clean. But I knew the inside was different now. New protocols, new code. A framed promise to employees on the wall where the family portrait used to hang. I didn't need to work there again. I'd already left my mark. As we drained the last of our coffee, Ethan looked at me and said, Slow. Slow, I agreed. No fireworks, no big redemption arc. Just truth. That was enough. Hale Dynamics didn't implode. It restructured. The media loved the scandal. For a week, the headline screamed, Crushed Girl Rewrites the Rules. Hale's CEO steps down amid ethics probe. Victoria Hale vanishes after metadata debacle. But scandals fade. Systems last. That's where the real work began. The board installed a new independent chair within 10 days of the gala. Ava and Aurora had seats at the table now, not just as investors, but as policy shapers. The first change? A full internal audit of all vendor contracts approved in the last 5 years. The second? A reformed procurement process where no single family member could approve a deal without an independent compliance officer signing off. I didn't return to Hale. They offered quietly. A leadership role in internal affairs. High salary. Apologies couched in corporate language. I declined. There's a difference between justice and returning to the scene of the crime. Instead, I accepted Ava's offer to build something new. The Ethics Lab, a branch within Aurora dedicated to teaching companies how to prevent the kind of failure that nearly erased me. It wasn't glamorous work. It was slow, detailed, and relentless. But it mattered. We worked with startups and legacy firms alike, developing plain English ethics codes, vendor fairness policies, and whistleblower protections that couldn't be ignored or quietly filed away. The kind of safeguards I wished I'd had. Ava gave me a team, Sam, of course, heading digital risk, and 2 new hires with backgrounds in compliance and investigative auditing. We trained HR reps. We conducted scenario drills. We taught people to see red flags before they turned into fire. One of our early clients was a Hale subsidiary. No one mentioned it directly. But when I walked into the meeting, the room quieted with the kind of respect that doesn't come from power, but from truth. That felt better than any apology. Back at Hale HQ, things changed visibly, too. Margaret oversaw the transformation, not with noise, but with precision. She had the family portrait in the lobby removed. In its place, a framed document titled The Hale Code: Transparency, Integrity, Accountability. Beneath it, a mounted QR code led to a living document, publicly viewable, that tracked updates to ethics procedures, board votes, and employee protections. A company's soul, finally visible. I visited the lobby once, just once. I stood there while 2 employees, mid-conversation, walked past me without pause. I wasn't Grace Miller, the scandal. I was just someone reading the wall like everyone else, and that was perfect. Ethan and I moved carefully. Coffee turned into a walk. A walk turned into dinner. Not romance, not yet. Just a rebuilding of something grounded in truth. We talked about therapy, about shame, about what love looks like after fire. He left the company shortly after the gala. Not in disgrace. He simply stepped away, took a sabbatical, maybe for good. I need to know who I am when I'm not a Hale executive, he said over dinner one night. I don't want my name to do the heavy lifting anymore. I understood more than he knew. One afternoon, as we walked through the city, he pointed to a boutique shop window displaying a plaque that read, "Make your name mean something." He turned to me. "I think you already did." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to, because he was right. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. It was about reclaiming truth, about making the system answer for the way it tried to erase me, about showing every woman, every employee, every person told to stay crushed that silence isn't the only path. It took almost a year from the day I walked out with that cardboard box. A year of fire. But by the end of it, the company that once tried to burn me down had rebuilt itself on the ashes. And the blueprints? They had my fingerprints all over them. The cafe wasn't fancy. No marble counters. No latte art swans. Just a quiet place tucked between a bookstore and a florist on a street that didn't scream wealth or legacy. It was the kind of place where you could breathe. Ethan was already there when I arrived, seated by the window with 2 cups on the table. No flowers, no gestures, just black coffee for him, oat milk latte for me, like he remembered. He stood when I walked in. No suit, no tie, just a sweater and jeans and that same uncertain smile he used to wear when we first started seeing each other. "Hey," he said. "Hey." I sat. We didn't rush into conversation. Just let the air settle. The weight of what we'd both carried lingered somewhere between us. "So," he said, wrapping his hands around his cup. "This is weird." I smiled faintly. "A little." He nodded. "But not bad." "No," I agreed. "Not bad." Outside, the street moved like any other morning. Delivery trucks groaned. A cyclist zipped past. The florist was dragging buckets of damp-stemmed flowers onto the sidewalk. Inside, it was just us. He took a sip of coffee, then looked up. "It still feels strange, existing outside that world." "Hale?" I asked. He nodded. "It was everything for so long. My name, my path, my expectations. It's like stepping out of a play and realizing you didn't write any of the lines you were speaking. I stirred my latte. What are you writing now? He laughed softly. Journals mostly, some consulting, a lot of walking, therapy, more therapy. I nodded. Good. He glanced at me. You? Busy, I said. The ethics lab is growing. We just signed a contract with a government agency. Apparently the bureaucracy wants to learn how not to eat its own tail. He smiled. You were always good at that. Making systems work for people, not the other way around. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. There was a long pause. Not awkward, just full. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. Do you think we ever really had a shot? I exhaled. I think we had the pieces, I said. But we were playing in a house designed to collapse. He nodded slowly. Yeah. Another beat passed. I think about that day sometimes, he said, quieter now. The town hall. I try to imagine what it would have cost me to just walk up to you, to ask if it was true. I didn't interrupt. I was scared, he continued. Not of you, of what it would mean if the people I loved were the ones doing the damage. I didn't want to look at that. So I looked away from you. That choice cost me everything, I said, not unkindly. I know, he said, and I'll never stop being sorry for that. I sipped my latte. Let it settle. I don't need an apology anymore, I said. I needed truth. I got that. He looked at me, eyes soft. So where does that leave us? I smiled, just barely. Here, talking. Two people with history, with scars, maybe with something still worth exploring. Slow, he asked, repeating the word we'd used before. Still slow, I said. No big promises, no declarations, just presence, just honesty. Outside the window, a girl in a red coat passed by, laughing into her phone. The bookstore flipped its sign from closed to open. Life kept moving. When we stood to leave, Ethan hesitated. I'm proud of you, he said. Not just for surviving it, but for changing the damn system. I didn't do it alone. No, he said, but you were the first to light the match. We walked out into the sunlight together. No arms linked. No romantic fade-out. Just two adults in the aftermath of fire, choosing to see what remains. As we passed the Hale building, its logo still gleaming, its lobby still pristine, I paused. Inside, the wall was different now. No family portrait, no curated myth. Just a framed copy of the new ethics code beneath a plaque that read, "Truth isn't loud, it just lasts." Below that, a small line in fine print. Developed in collaboration with the Aurora Ethics Lab, founded by Grace Miller. I didn't stop to stare. I just kept walking, because the building still stood. But the rules inside, those were mine.